Oh, come on. Come on. Come on. Hidden gems. We all know them and we all love them. We fucking love them. We all have games that pop into our minds whenever someone utters those two magical words. You're thinking of something right now. Leave it in the comments, then delete it and shove it up your ass. This video is about me and my hidden gems. You know what my favorite part about these videos are? The inevitable comments from Pissy Crusher 57. We've heard of these games already. They're not hidden gems. We heard of them. Yes, good. I'm glad you have heard of them. I probably heard of them all too, but you know what? I didn't know that they were fucking awesome. Did you ever watch some of these videos on here? And people say the stupidest shit like, did you know? Fucking GoldenEye for the Nintendo 64 is really good. Yes, we did know. Maybe you didn't. And you know what? Go with God, you idiot. You didn't know GoldenEye kicked ass, and now you have played one of the best, most influential games of all time. God bless you, you fucking moron. I love you. So, without further ado, I present an incredibly original Hidden Gems video by a creator with less than 700 subscribers. I'm gonna start this one off with a boomstick. Evil Dead Regeneration. That's not a hidden gem. I've heard of that game. Evil Dead is basically a franchise. You know what? There's no basically about it. It is a franchise I grew up with, but I ignored all the games for some reason, and I don't know why. I've demonstrated in previous videos that I was a fucking moron and bought licensed games all the time. I have no idea why I never bought an Evil Dead game. I will continue to ignore the PS1/Dreamcast title Hail to the King, since PS1 era tank controls can go fuck themselves. Seriously, I know we're entering the PS1 Nintendo 64 era nostalgic throwback games, but if anyone unironically thinks that making a PS1 style Resident Evil game with tank controls is a solid idea, I can recommend a few good psychiatrists who could dive deep into your childhood and find out why your brain box is fucking broken. There's also another game after Hail to the King that I enjoyed called Fistful of Boomstick, but overall it shows its age. It has some expected PS2 era jank, which is fine. What isn't fine is the forced horizontal inversion, which was a thing in some games back then for reasons only the stroke victims who designed it can explain to us. I mean, I can understand forcing vertical inversion since that's what a normal person should play, but horizontal? What the hell are you? Some kind of bitch? However, Evil Dead Regeneration doesn't just hold up, it still kicks Deadite ass. The game's story is a neat what-if type of scenario, basically ignoring the end of Evil Dead 2 and imagining a world where Ash didn't get sucked into the vortex and land in the past. Essentially, Army of Darkness never happened. Instead, he's locked away in a mental institution while everyone around him understandably thinks his batshit story about a Book of the Dead and all the happenings at the cabin are that of a madman. But Ash ain't a madman, he's the guy with the gun! Right off the bat, I was impressed with this one. Bruce is in top form voicing Ash here, with an enthusiasm I wasn't really expecting.
With this particular symbol, you can temporarily take possession of other beings.
If I go puppet master on Bacon Bit here, will I be able to shut his stinking pie hole?
Especially after the acting in the last game, which, while fine, just felt a little, I'm getting paid. But not in this one. This one is funny, like legitimately funny. And if anybody knows anything about legitimately funny, it's me. Watch. Now, don't question my comedic authority again. Back to the game. This is what a Saturday morning cartoon version of Evil Dead would have been like, and I know that sounds like an insult, but I mean it in the best possible way. It's colorful, it's lively, it's energetic. Ted Raimi voices your half-Deadite sidekick and might actually be the best part of the whole thing. He's an old-timey gangster/victim of the antagonist's torture and experiments, and naturally acts as the butt of most of the jokes, including the running joke throughout the game where he keeps dying in increasingly hilarious ways. Ouch! I mean, it works. Gameplay-wise, this isn't a complicated game. It was a budget title at release, but it doesn't feel like one. You have a collection of weapons for each arm, like your usual chainsaw and boomstick, but you eventually get access to rocket launchers, flamethrowers, and even a harpoon gun. A harpoon gun that makes it easy to grab enemies and pull them into you to introduce them to your sawed-off shotgun. It's a hell of a good time. Of course, you have some combos you can memorize if you want to pull that shit off, or you can just mash the slashy and shooty buttons and you'll still have a great time. There's nothing here that's especially difficult or frustrating, and the whole thing just feels designed to make you feel as cool as possible as you slice and shoot your way through the undead. It's short, which is perhaps the only way its budget price rears its head. If you're even a little competent in action games, you can burn through it in 4 or so hours. But it's a consistently enjoyable 4 hours, even when I think they're gonna mess it up, like with these forced escort sections that they repeat more than a few times. The excellent balance and controls just make blowing the heads off everything they throw at you feel empowering rather than frustrating. Through and through, this is still a great time, and I highly recommend setting an afternoon aside and just checking it out. Or, you can try the next hidden gem in this incredibly original video, Psyops.
That's not a hidden gem. I've heard of that one too.
I didn't know Psyops was a hidden gem. I actually thought that game did well. What I learned after telling people about it is that this bad boy flew further under the radar than I thought. Those who have played it almost always sing its praises, and those who haven't are surprised to hear it's actually good. Another third-person action game in the same vein as Evil Dead Regeneration, Psyops doesn't pull any punches even from the outset. Its combat is punchy, the gunplay feels impactful, and the powers you accumulate throughout the game are fun and varied. Careful though, as baddies can melt your health bar quicker than you can spell the game's title.
Oh, the P is silent.
The P is Wait a minute, were you calling it Psyops? But let's talk about the story, because the story is very Kojima in many ways. Silly, filled with larger-than-life characters, and has more twists, turns, and backstabs to make even the most Metal Gear diehard at least look up for a few seconds before going back to pretending Death Stranding isn't a colossal piece of shit. But to boil it down simply, you're a soldier and you have mind powers. Good? Good. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of The Force Unleashed. You can pick guys up and throw them around much like you could in that game, but it might actually feel better and more responsive here. As the game progresses, you begin to unlock more and more abilities, like taking control of baddies and draining them of life to refill your own. And you do all this stuff in a game that, and I can't stress this enough, is fucking gorgeous for the time. If this ran at a higher resolution, it could pass for an early-gen Xbox 360 game without issue. The frame rate will suffer for those gorgeous visuals here and there, but for the most part I didn't have a problem. Much like the Metal Gear series, a big part of Psyops is the interesting boss battles with the wild cast of characters they throw at you. And while they aren't necessarily mind-shatteringly, is that a word, original, they manage to have enough personality and cause enough destruction to feel memorable nonetheless. It's another short game, although longer than Regeneration. Psyops just feels like a huge swing that apparently just didn't hit, but I'm here to tell you it should have. Its fun combat and abilities mixed with the intentionally silly and over-the-top story combined to make a pretty awesome action game. Not without its flaws like the aforementioned frame rate issue and some frustrating difficulty spikes. Psyops nonetheless feels like a franchise that just should have happened. And I mean that literally, as it ends in a cliffhanger that will never be resolved. You know, this doesn't feel right. Just cut the music. No, actually, put something sad or depressing on. That should be good. I'd like to drop the act here and just apologize for insulting Hideo Kojima fans and for referring to his latest game, Death Stranding, as a giant stream of continuous shit that just gets more wet and sticky the longer it gets. Look, I regret my choice of words, and I regret referring to you, the fans of Death Stranding, as the open mouths that the giant stream of immeasurably disgusting shit coils into. Look, I understand now that these words are not okay, and I pray for your forgiveness. And that's all I have to say about that. Delta Force Urban Warfare was a late-gen PlayStation 1 first-person shooter that tried to punch well above its weight. It is clearly pushing the PlayStation 1 to its absolute limits, and you know what? It looks good. In some ways, it looks as good as some early-gen PlayStation 2 titles. It pays a price for this beauty because the frame rate is extremely unstable. It spends most of its time in the teens, but boy, is it a pretty teens. Just now realizing how creepy that sentence is. The story is
Something American military special ops shooty face kablooey mission foobar. Uh-oh, terrorists shooty blow uppy bang.
And for the most part, it bang booms terrorists right in the America. When you're not ignoring the story, you're engaged in some really competent shooting for the time. Dual stick aiming? Check. Competent aim assist that helps iron out the frame rate hitches? Check. Chonky PS1 era texture warping? A check. Delta Force feels way more modern than most games on the PlayStation 1, probably because it was released in 2002, and it makes you wonder why it was released on the PlayStation 1 at all when the PS2 had already been on store shelves for almost 2 years at this point. Nevertheless, it manages to make the most of the PS1 hardware. It's an action game first and foremost, but stealth is also an option and sometimes a requirement. And again, this feels pretty well done for the time. Sure, you have a few of your standard insta-fails here and there, but the game is fun and competent enough that you want to hop in and try it again. Its short runtime makes it another afternoon burner, but that works in its favor. A lot of these games just tend to overstay their welcome with too much shooty zip bang. Delta Force knows when to quit. A few difficulty spikes later in the game can cause some frustration, as well as some cheap shotting enemies, but the positives here far outweigh the drawbacks. Basically, if you ever wanted to play a GoldenEye meets Cold Winter style game on your PlayStation 1, you cannot go wrong here. Oh my god, Cold Winter, okay, no, wait, Cold Winter isn't a hidden gem. You've played and or heard of Cold Winter for the PlayStation 2, right?
That one I have not heard of, no.
I'm, just not realizing I didn't script an ending to this video. I wasn't sure if I was gonna have more than 3 games, Okay, bye. I haven't even played Death Stranding. Let's just get it all out on the table. I have zero interest in playing a delivery man for 30, 40, 50 hours or whatever. That is the least interesting thing I have ever heard. I don't care how many people say, it's actually a lot more fun than that. No, it isn't. You are the same people who are trying to convince me that Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't the most tedious game that has ever been created by man. It is! And I got other news for you. News drop, news flash. Breath of the Wild is not the greatest game of all time. It isn't even the best Zelda game. If any other studio in existence other than Nintendo made that game exactly the same way, except it wasn't called Zelda, it would have gotten 6s and 7s and have been forgotten in a week. Feel free to unfollow now.